being ring-fenced, clearly as part of us trying to reduce any potential redundancies as part of that process. But in terms of democratic services, certainly in terms of the head role, that's now been resolved, and that shouldn't say interim in simple terms. But again, across the council as a whole, we have completed the vast majority now of appointments and interviews. There are still remaining some vacancies, and again, where there are people who are still at risk of redundancy, we are trying to do our very best about promoting those opportunities for them to apply and be considered for those vacancies.
Well, can I just say congratulations? We're jolly glad to still happy, but on a personal and professional level, very much so, Scott.
I would echo that as well.
We're all going to have to say it now, aren't we, Mr. Chair? Well, that's Scott.
Very kind.
Well, of course, we must be aware of the council's cash constraints. We can't afford a new sign yet.
Yeah, that's always.
So, anybody else like to make any comments on what Scott said or anything else that has arisen so far? Otherwise, we'll just note the report and await the next meeting, which will involve a flip chart, no doubt. So I noticed that Scott's been following a flip chart visual on his screen here, by the way. Nothing else from anybody? No. Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is a code of conduct complaints. Are you taking that one? Yeah.
Thank you, Chase. And again, this is your usual report that you have on a quarterly basis at your meetings. Again, this provides the details in the usual format in terms of the number of complaints that have been received, their type. And again, you can see in terms of particularly paragraph on page 15, paragraph 4.1, which then goes through to page 16. Hopefully you will be reassured in terms of seeing there's a nice graph in there in terms of complaint numbers. That has been showing a steady reduction over a period of time. And again, just working through in terms of 4.3, I know you have a focus particularly in terms of us meeting our standard of resolving a substantive response within 20 working days. And you can see there that there were 2 were not completed. One of those again, and the reasons for those set out there. And again, on trends and themes in 4.4, again, you can see those together with the source of complaints. You will recall, though, that quite a number of complaints tend to be submitted with multiple allegations of breaches. So that's why you can see on there a large spread. We don't generally tend to find, there are some, but you don't generally tend to find a single provision that's generally cited. So you can see in some cases where particular areas are drawn out. And you can see one of the most common ones on that one, which is around category of disrespect. And again, I think the key thing there, and that probably links with the work that we've been doing with SALC, is about how we bring to life a bit more in terms of the code of conduct around behaviours. So there is a particular point, and quite a number of the complaints generally tend to display issues around poor relationships between individuals, and those poor relationships leading to poor behaviours, or certainly allegations of poor behaviour. So that's something that we want to particularly help, which is around the point about civility and respect, which is part of a national campaign. And that for us is something which we're particularly keen in working with SALC on. So how are we going to promote the types of examples that we'd like to see, and the types of poor behaviours which clearly will fall foul of the code of conduct. And other than that, Chair, happy to take any comments as usual in terms of the report.
Do we have any comments or questions from the committee members? David?
It's just a quick one. Is this working?
Press it.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it
No, I was just
Oh,
going
it's
to
not
mention,
working.
it's not working.
Why is it not working?
Oh, it is
No,
now.
no, I was just going to mention before you mentioned the NELC civility and respect project that was raised, I think, on the P1 call.
Mhm.
So how can we work alongside that with that? How can we use that to benefit delivery of that, what we can do locally?
You?
Sure. Again, I mean, I think there's still a lot in terms of what I would call basic awareness. I would probably suggest, and some of you are members of parish and town councils of various types across Somerset. I think as a whole, more could be done about sharing and bringing awareness of the NELC civility and respect. And there's quite a helpful series of tools and information in there to help bring to life what do we mean by civility and respect, particularly in terms of councillors undertaking their duties. So I think there's, if nothing more, there's an initial job about helping push out and promote that NELC information through local resources of SELC and Somerset Council. I think that's our initial step, but I do think we then need to start thinking about how, and this is the piece of work we've been doing particularly with SELC, which is many of their training programmes, similar to Somerset Council's, are designed around the code of conduct rather than necessarily civility and respect, which is behaviours. So I think we've identified a gap, which is, so how can we provide some training and briefings around what civility and respect means and what are the pitfalls that people may fall into by certain types of behaviours. So again, I think that's the area that we've got a particular focus for what we call the 25-26 financial year.
I know at the P1 meeting as well, we were talking about I know you don't want to talk about specific cases, whatever, but the situation in Chard, I think, and the fact that an improvement board had been put in place. Are there any sort of updates on that and how effective that is in correcting things?
You'd like to talk about that? Yeah.
So again, I think one of the parts of the work around the type of intervention and offer that we've developed and are developing further with SELC is around that sort of general available to all training through to more intermediate focused training, but also recognising there may still be some instances where the level of challenges being experienced in an individual town or parish council may require a more targeted intervention. And in those, that's where we've been looking at how we can provide a more targeted form of intervention and offer. But again, that's working with the respective town or parish council. I think the key there is always to remember they are their own legal entity. So Somerset Council's functions are only in respect of considering complaints. We do not have legal powers to effectively intervene directly into a town or parish council. That's why we work with, and that's also why we work with SELC in terms of how we can work collaboratively. Now, we have been making strides with some individual town councils which need some of that more sort of tailored support. So that work is ongoing. There is a offer of support about how we can support, provide more targeted intervention, but that's also recognising a timing point at the moment, as I understand it, from a respective individual town council for when they would like that offer activated. So we talk through what that could comprise, we talk through about what those measures are, but we've also recognised that there have been some improvements over recent months within their own operations. So for us, I think it's just respecting around the offer and support that we can provide, but also seeing they have made improvements. They understand the areas where they do need to make improvements, and they understand where we could offer more help, but that's help which they then need to take up rather than us impose.
So could I bring Councillor Nicholson first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do always remember that they are their own sovereign bodies. And I am very pleased to see the reducing number of complaints. And the very reducing, that there are no multiples in one council. Things have clearly changed. I think we've got the answer. If things have quite clearly changed just by looking at the graph. Yes, most of the majority of the complaints that have arisen are about respect and so on. However, dismissed, partially upheld, and upheld. So there are the number of complaints that are actually upheld is quite small, and they have not entirely been about the questions of respect. In fact, 1.5 were. We must be really careful to work with SALK, which after all is a membership organisation. No, the town and parish, city, town and parish councils do not have to do with SALK if they don't want to. But we do need to work with them on an offer where it's needed. But looking at the data we have today, I think we should be really, really careful not to have a sledgehammer to crack a nut. And I fear we're a little bit inclined to do so.
To come back on that.
I think just to help draw out Councillor Nicholson's point, I think one of the things you'll notice, hopefully, as a shift is if you look at Appendix 1, the vast majority of complaints are actually from members of the public. There was a period, certainly about 12 months ago, when there was a higher percentage of complaints from within councils, whether from staff against their councillors or from fellow councillors making complaints about other councillors on the same council. So that there has clearly been a shift, and the evidence is showing that, as Councillor Nicholson says. I think the key bit is they're just recognising that there can be a change in some local situations. So the important bit of the work of SELC is making sure that we are prepared. So thinking about what we've seen in some individual town councils, it's about how we are perhaps better prepared with SELC to have a better offer of support than what may have existed 12 or 18 months ago. So I think that's the important bit, is that reassurance that we've thought of, we're aware of, and we've got something rather than reacting or waiting for that.
You want to come back on that, John?
Yes, I absolutely welcome that. Yes, being prepared is absolutely right. Having thought about it is absolutely right. But I think we should be wary of telling them they all need this support when actually, frankly, most of them don't.
Councillor Dimmery.
Yeah, in terms of investigating complaints, is there ever a case of drawing in the political group leader where it's relevant and asking the political group leader to talk to it? Because I find it a bit frustrating, actually, that complaints can be made against a member of the council, but in their capacity as a parish or town council, and there's nothing we can do about it. I think inappropriate behaviour is an appropriate behaviour in the public setting, however it occurs as an elected member. And sometimes in a parish or town, there isn't, apart from SELC, there isn't a recourse to action. And I'm wondering, it seemed to me that at times it would be appropriate for the leader of the political group, if indeed they belong to one, to be called in and asked to have a word with that person, or to be involved in this any kind of conversations that had and an inquiry that's had. Does that happen?
Scott, do you want to come on that?
Sorry, forgive me. I was slightly distracted by another point. I missed that final bit of your question. Sorry.
Finally, do we ever get in touch with the group leader, the political group leader, if somebody in their group is out of line and there's an inquiry into them?
Yeah, there are occasions where we would speak to a group leader, particularly where complaints have escalated to a certain level, not least of which where we would be holding a complaint, well, effectively a hearing subcommittee.
Alan James as well.
Thanks.
So there's three, can I take you after these three on here first? There's three speakers behind me, I can't even see, but Paul Hooper, I believe first.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry, it didn't connect up until just the beginning of this code of conduct, so I didn't hear the first few items on the agenda. Nothing was live. On this particular point, and I know I'm going to be banging the drum again, you're talking about various code of are we getting any complaints? Could we have a breakdown of complaints from town, parish, and or parish meetings? Because is there a particular group of councils or type of councils that we're getting more from? Just I wonder whether there is a scenario there that we should look at, bit like Mr. Murray is saying about political leaders. Is there a type of council we're getting more complaints from?
Okay, so the information we have is on the appendix. Scott, you're able to extrapolate from that the information required?
Yeah, only just that, Chair, which is we categorise on the appendix the type of council that's involved.
You want to come back, Mr. Hooper? Okay.
No, all right, fine.
Okay, so are you Jones? I think I've got next.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to support Councillor Nicholson's point, actually, that the recent improvement in charge, I think the new clerk deserves a lot of credit on that. And this is we have to recognise these are a minority of the 270 parish councils in Somerset, but obviously we need to be focused on providing the support to the council where there is a problem and when there is a problem. So it is the vast majority of councils, it is not a behavioural problem at all. It is when respect between individuals breaks down, and we need to find the best way to support them in those cases. But yeah, well done, the new clerk at Chard.
Okay, Alan Jones up there, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I'm not in the room with you today. In this morning, just to respond directly to Councillor Dimmery's point around involvement of the group leaders, it's a matter that both Scott and I and the other deputy monitoring officers would always kind of discuss. If there is a matter that has been raised with an individual member, we would always encourage them to seek support from their group leader if they felt it necessary or appropriate. We always believe it's appropriate for that relevant member to reach out to their group leader to kind of have that conversation in the first instance. And if there are any persistent issues that aren't flagged and we're aware that the group leaders aren't being informed, we will take that step. And it also depends on the severity of the complaint as well. So it's a judgment matter, but we first and foremost would always encourage individual members to engage with their group leader. And then secondly, we'd also, if there was a prevailing issue, we'd also kind of raise that directly with the group leaders as well. The fact that we probably haven't had those conversations is a good thing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Sally, just come in.
Chair, I recently took a refresher course with SALC on the Code of Conduct. Found it really, really interesting, particularly in the light of since I've joined this committee. One of the things that struck me was that the emphasis that if you are a councillor, you're a councillor and you're viewed as a councillor, whether you're in a council meeting on council business or if you're down the pub. And I think that's something that probably our members need to be reminded of. So it was very good training, thank you. And secondly, it just occurred to me that maybe a 15-minute bite-sized video that could be sent out to parish councils that could be viewed either individually or could be put on an agenda, just to say, this is something that's really important to us. If there's any conversation afterwards, but at least you've got that message out, because I know quite a lot of my colleagues in the parish council probably wouldn't bother to attend a course, be particularly interested. And I think it would be good to be reminded of standards of behaviour. Thank you.
Scott, could you just
Yeah, again, I think that's a really good point, particularly in terms of how we continue to regularly promote the importance of good standards of conduct and behaviour. I think to help support on the video for those that were at the conference with the parish and town councils last November, we used a video from the Committee for Standards in Public Life. I did an introduction in there about the Nolan principles and codes of conduct and the support that's available. I mean, I certainly suggest in the first instance, from memory, that's only about a 10-minute video. So that could be something, again, just to help bring to life, something which sometimes can appear quite technical and legalistic when you look at a code of conduct. So yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion about how we can use some of the forms of media to help in terms of awareness.
Dave?
I support that absolutely. I think the code of conduct, as a parish councillor, we do sort of, what's the word, renew it or agree it once a year, and it's a tick box exercise, to be honest. I mean, I do have my say, but I'm sure normally it's just something that is done on, passed on the nod, rather than having a 10-minute video would be, I think, really helpful.
We do.
Okay, any other comments from everybody? I can't see who's behind me. So everybody behind me puts their hand up, shout, he's behind me or something. Nobody else in the room?
No, I'm
No. Okay, so we'll note those points raised, particularly one by Sally a minute ago, and we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, if that's okay. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the support package for councils. Are you leaving on that one, Scott, or just
Actually, I mean, part of that we've already just been talking about in terms of the joint work that we've been doing. Certainly as part of the Priority 1 group, the joint work we've been doing for some time now with SALC in terms of offer. Again, I think it's something in terms of an overall package, something which we could probably better bring in terms of a structured format to the next meeting, particularly around setting out that sort of generic provision, that more sort of targeted, and what a more intervention measure might mean. So I think that's something we've certainly spent a lot of time working up, designing, looking at what we've currently got, looking where we need to add. I think that's something, again, that would usefully be presented to the next meeting in terms of a more structured report. But I don't know if Ewan wanted to add anything further in terms of that work.
yeah, you did that?
Yeah, just to support what Scott's saying, as we're saying, we're working on with the Priority 1 group. I will reiterate the message. I know I say it the whole time. It's not just about code of conduct training. To improve standards across the piece, we need to get clerks and councillors trained in the wider responsibilities of their jobs. So I'm very pleased that the councillor who recently attended a course found it a good experience. We've got a whole range of councillor essentials, and one of the big issues I'm appreciating support on from the local community network link officer team is actually encouraging councils to get their clerks trained, which is an issue, and basically to create budgets to get your officers trained. It's an issue that cuts across the ongoing devolution post-unitarisation in better, as more responsibilities get passed down to city and town councils and some of the parishes, having qualified clerks with the certificate in local council administration to be able to, the council to declare the general power of competence to take on certain responsibilities is a benefit. And when you don't have that, that may block certain things happening. There's generally an overlap between officers who've not been trained and misunderstandings about the responsibilities of councillors and clerks. So yeah, I welcome support from the officer team in getting the message out to please councillors, train your officers. Thank you.
Okay, I think I have Councillor Davis indicate first.
Thanks, Chair. Item 3, please, on the support package for councils. Item P. Whether Somerset councillors should attend parish council meetings when the standards committee are aware they may need more support I'm quite mystified by that because I thought if we didn't attend parish councils, we wouldn't be in touch with our members of the public. So what does that actually mean? It's gobbledygook to me. Where the standards committee are aware that they may need more support. Yeah, I'm quite mystified by that.
Did you want to come on that, Scott, or is that for you?
No, I mean, again, that's designed primarily for the councillors of Somerset Council. I think there's there in terms of, for me, it forms part of that support package. So support's about recognising that training, that briefing. There's also, we talked about the work that could be done with the Society of Local Council Clerks, SLCC, that support the clerks of parish and town councils. But I think there's also recognising the valuable role that the 110 Somerset Council councillors can play as both advocates and ambassadors, particularly in terms of where there may be need for support in working relations and local relations. So I think that point is more about recognising how Somerset Council councillors can also form part of supporting local town and parish councils where there may be developing issues which may need help and support, and that by virtue of them being involved also draws in the wider Somerset Council and clearly can draw on the support package from both our legal and our democratic services teams together as well, working with SELP. So I think it's just about recognising that the 110 councillors can also play a part in helping support town and parish councils.
Did you want to come back on that, Hugh, at all?
Thank you, that's very kind of you. Can you make a point, please, Scott? What I'm finding difficult when I go to parish council meetings, that the clerk or clerks know far more than me on situations that are happening all the time, which are not secret, but not in world use. And I'm totally embarrassed that I sit there not knowing what they're talking about. So they're having these special meetings, and I'm thinking, why haven't my colleagues, all of us from Somerset Council, have the same sort of heads up? Thank you, Chair.
Did you want to comment on that?
I mean, again, I know that certainly in terms of Somerset Council and the work that Somerset Council undertakes, clearly we continue to promote and highlight across nearly 4,800 staff the need to ensure that the 110 councillors are kept informed, particularly about any change in their areas, whether there's a road closure, whether there's a change to operating hours through certain services like libraries or other locally based services. Equally, I think we've also been making particular strides with our colleagues in the local community networks about the regular meetings that they also have with the parish and town clerks to make sure that our 110 councillors are also informed of those findings as well. So you're right to flag, particularly with the size and the geography of Somerset, that communication and everyone being kept informed is both one, a challenge, but two, is really, really important. And that's something I think that we don't lose sight of. And I think for us, it's a goal that we're just continuing to just keep trying to meet.
Could I bring in Councillor Nicholson first?
Yeah, tell the local councillor is something which we never have to stop talking about, but that's it. However, I do, I was, there are various things here, but at the moment I'd like to talk about that item 3. Yeah, most councillors attend their parish council meetings anyway. Secondly, they speak at the invitation of the chair of the parish council. They have no right to speak or to intervene or to advise or to warn. Their advice may be asked, in which case let's hope it's good advice, and sometimes it might be and it might not be. But if there's a tricky situation, quite often it's a chairman and/or clerk will talk quietly to the local councillor outside the meeting, and that's probably better. And I sort of think 3 is a bit redundant. And actually, rather treading on the toes of the autonomy of those councils, because the Somerset councillor turns up as a member of the public and only speaks to him.
That's a response to that, Scott, so.
Chair, I don't know if Alan wanted to make a particular comment on this point before I respond.
Okay, I've got Alan's on the list. If you was waiting it, Martin, we'll bring in Alan. Alan.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to kind of follow the point, and it was more kind of Scott's point in relation to tell local councillors. So it's definitely a theme that both Scott and I have talked about in terms of driving that again as a key message for the year ahead, and starting to encourage all members of staff to ensure they're talking to local members, but all members in terms of the briefing notes, and also making sure they're having those individual conversations on key matters. So that's something we'll continue to drive. I don't think we can do enough of it either. I think it's always those things we need to continue to do to remind staff of the importance of taking those steps, but also that we are keeping you as members, all members, engaged as part of those processes. To deal with Councillor Davis's point in particular regarding kind of key parts of information, we have taken great steps, as Scott's mentioned, regarding information that's shared with town and parish council clerks is also then shared regularly after all of those sessions, before and after all of those sessions with members. I think what we'd probably need to do is start to think about how we can frame some of that information in a better way so it's more digestible, it's easy for you to see and pick up, so you've got all those kind of key point briefings ready for those parish council discussions. So I think that's probably one of the key things we'll be working on as we go ahead of the next kind of year. But say the main thing that we want to kind of drive is that point around how do we ensure that all services, no matter how big or small the decision that they think it might be, it could be a major issue for you as local councillors, and how do we then kind of drive them to make sure they're kind of having those conversations. So definitely a key theme for the year ahead. Thank you, Chair.
And did you want to come back on that then, Scott?
Well, I think the only thing I'd probably just supplement, I think it's feeding off some of the points that many of the committee have made as well this morning. It's an expansion of 5B under that heading of number 7, which is, and I think Ewan also referenced the importance of the clerks also having support for training. I think it's also just recognising that in addition to the work that we're doing with SELC, the importance of also engaging with Society for Local Council Clerks as well, the SLCC. I think they're perhaps another key part of the support package for councils, which is about recognising the training and awareness for councillors, but also the training and support for town and parish clerks as well. And the two really do need to go hand in hand as part of a coordinated support package. But ultimately, like many things, the support package is about promoting awareness, making people aware and offering support, but ultimately those councils, it is their choice on what level of support they wish to take up.
Francis, did you want to come back on this? Okay, rose from your point or not? Okay. I've got Councillor Dimmery, David, I've got Paul, so let's take Councillor Dimmery first.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, following up from what Hugh and Francis have said, on point number 3, I mean, obviously there are some councillors that have a multitude of different parishes. I think you do, Francis, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm fortunate I have 2, but some have 10. And is it that many? Stop showing off. But I'm assuming in that case you probably can't attend all of them. They must happen at the same time in a lot of cases. You could do
3 in one night.
Okay.
4 is a challenge.
That's very impressive. But I think perhaps the wording might change there to whether Somerset councillors should support parish council meetings when the stands committee are aware they may need it, rather than attending, because there's the implications.
Offer.
All right, I'll go with that.
The offer support is just a bit friendlier.
Yeah.
Coming to the word in there, Scott, or not?
No, I think that's very sensible. I think it's helped strike that balance. It comes back to that point about how Somerset councillors are those ambassador roles in terms of standards of conduct. It's recognising that it's offering support, and there's an important distinction between offering and imposing. So I think that that offer is really important.
Are you happy with that word in there?
Yes, coming back on point that we were talking about earlier about intervention. On the P1 call, Ewan was talking about a NALC example of a report. So I just wonder if that's available for sort of general distribution. That would be interesting to see. That. So it's a question for Ewan.
Ewan, the question for you.
Yes, it is available. I can distribute it via Scott.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful. And sorry, another quick point that actually relates to SALC as well, but it's around the general power of competence. And I think some work that I've been doing with Hesticum and for which we were very grateful for a grant from SALC. But it depended on one of the councils within the LCN having general power of competence to be able to apply for that grant and share it. So I think if we want to see LCNs succeed, then we need to have more councils with general power of competence. It would have fallen over if West Monkton hadn't had that. And they are the single council out of 8 that have that general power of competence. So I think for LCNs to succeed, definitely need more councils with general power of competence.
Do you want to answer that, Scott, at all?
Again, only just to support the general desire for as many councils as possible locally to demonstrate and secure that power.
Okay, and Paul Hooper.
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Alan Jones was saying about more communication to everybody at all levels. And I do hope that Somerset are communicating with parish meetings as well as parish councils and town councils. And on the actual item 7, as it's worded, in item 1, it does refer to all types of council. But then in others, we start talking about parish councils, and parish councils should arrange to buddy up with parish councils, but they need to also buddy up with parish meetings as well.
Let's come back on that, Scott.
Again, that's the committee to debate whether it feels these items which have come forward from priority 1 group need any further amendments. I know there's clearly a distinction, and I hope that many of us understand the difference between parish town councils and parish meetings. I know we've explained before about from the pure legal duties that Somerset Council's intervention and consideration of complaints about local councillors is restricted to town, parish, city councillors and councillors of Somerset Council. We do not have powers of intervention or consideration in relation to complaints about members of parish meetings. But I think
there aren't any members of parish meetings. They don't exist. Then I just
which is why we don't have any direct intervention. But I think Paul's point again is a key point, which I know is key for the committee to keep on its horizon, which is, so what is the offer for parish meetings? Otherwise, I suppose the fairly obvious question is there a gap in the offer if we don't fully anticipate it? So I think that's the question which Paul is posing in terms of the many of the points that are here do still talk about parish councils.
I've got Alan first, I'll bring in Francis afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. Somebody talked about budgets, parish councils setting budgets for training of their members and for their clerks. We've also heard about Society of Local Council Clerks, SLCC. Membership of that is not inexpensive. It's over £100, if I remember right, when I was a member. It is for the individual clerks, and therefore individual clerks are often paying that substantial amount of money. And I wonder if we could suggest to parish councils that when they are setting their budget for training of members and clerks, they also include a contribution to the SLCC membership. It's an extremely useful forum because it counts countrywide, and you can pick up information 24/7. I have done it, so it's a very good organisation to be a member of. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to comment on that further?
Again, it's a very sensible suggestion. I think it also helps draw out the support package, also encompassing the work of SLCC. Again, it's for the committee to consider where what you have here are the priority one group's suggestions for you to consider. And yes, I think the debate today certainly highlighted that in addition to councillors of parish and town councils, the importance of support also being there for the clerks, for those town and parish councils as well. So yeah, if that's something that you believe should be further strengthened in 5B, perhaps with a more specific reference to engagement or working jointly with SLCC, then that's again for the committee to consider as part of its debate.
Okay, let's bring in Francis first, then Sam.
Right, a number of things. One, the only person in a parish meeting that I think there could be any offer to is the chairman of the parish meeting, who was elected by the parishioners. My thinking is that would almost inevitably be fairly informal, because it's an informal post. But that's the only way in, and it might be something that we concerned with. The second one is absolutely. It is not unknown for parish council to pay their clerk subscription to the SLCC. I mean, I was assuming that most did. I would have thought there was a role here very specifically, not for Somerset Council, but for Thorpe, to tell their members that this might be a good thing. I don't think it's appropriate for Somerset Council to try and tell them how they ought to budget. But I do think it is a role for Thorpe, and I would really encourage it. The third thing is when I do want to ask some more general questions about the support package, but only at the appropriate time, which probably isn't now. I don't want to stop the flow and change the subject.
Just done it.
Okay.
Do you want to come back on that?
I think perhaps what today's, I mean, we have talked about SLCC before, but perhaps what today's debate has highlighted, and I just offer this as a suggestion. I talked about, certainly for the next meeting, a more structured report following some refinement in your comments today on that support package coming forward to your next meeting. It may be useful, if you think it would be useful, for us to see if we can ask for a representative from SLCC to also join that meeting, to also talk about the offer that they provide to clerks. And I think going back to Councillor Nicholson's point, I think part of the questions the committee may then want to explore is to what extent do they promote their offer to Somerset's town and parish councils. So I think it's similar to the work that we've been doing in some ways with SELC. I think it's recognising that SLCC also have a responsibility and a role in what are they doing to promote their offer to the local councils. Or are they looking for Somerset Council to be the intermediary, the broker? And I think Councillor Nicholson just highlighted again that point around. I think it's important to recognise how the three organisations work together as part of supporting the improvement of standards of conduct. So I just offer that to see if the committee would find that useful. We could take that as an action to find out if someone from SLCC would like to attend the next meeting, talk about their offer and package and how they are promoting that.
So before I go to Sally, Paul and you, and I noticed you're shaking your head vigorously, much of this, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah. It's for SLC and SLCC to persuade the members of town, city, town and parish councillors to spend their money in that way. It's not for us to tell them that. So I'm not quite sure what the benefit of bringing them here for us to discuss it further is, really, and to see how to persuade them to do it. That's their role. I don't think we need to.
Would you like to try to illustrate the benefits?
I completely agree in the sense of what role Somerset Council has. I was thinking more around you as the committee being reassured around what are they actually doing. Otherwise, you're asking Somerset Council officers to tell you what are they doing in part.
We don't need to know.
If the committee don't believe or don't feel that you don't want a reference to SLCC in this, then again that's all part of the debate. So I was just picking up on the comments about SLCC. If you don't believe there's a need for the committee to find out about the work of SLCC, then that's clearly the committee's prerogative.
I've got 4 more speakers. Do you want to finish on that point? Or you're okay, it's not. Sally, I think the next.
Thank you. This is possibly not relevant for this conversation now, but I was interested to know in the increase in parishes having general power of competence status. Is that a trend that it's being encouraged, and can you explain the benefits, or is it a conversation outside in the break time?
Yes.
I mean, certainly as part of the work with the local community networks, there's clearly been, I think, a recognition and again promoting awareness. And I know SALC also promote the awareness of the benefits of being able to demonstrate and secure that power of competence. I think the key part generally is it brings with it additional benefits in relation to potential additional functions being devolved. There are conditional elements around some devolution of powers, not least of which run around generally a parent council wanting to be satisfied that when it's being asked to devolve powers, that the relevant local council actually has a power of competence. And again, that's just as an assurance point. So there's a relationship between the power of competence and town or parish councils wanting to effectively gain additional functions and services at a local level. So there is that relationship. And again, going back to the example we talked about in terms of standards of conduct, that's all ultimately down to the local councils to decide if that's a journey that they want to pursue. It's not something which we would be imposing on.
Did you have to come back on that at all, Sally?
No, that's fine. I'm looking at David, and I think I might have a conversation with him with Brett. Thank you. Thanks.
I'll bring David in shortly. I've got Paul Hooper first behind that.
Yeah, I'd like to take on what Frances Nicholson said, that I quite agree with her, that elections at parish meetings are normally just the chairman, full stop. But my main point over parish meetings is to ensure that they are communicated with, and that Somerset Council actually communicates and they receive information, which at the moment a lot are left in the dark. And I think the inclusion of them receiving information would make an awful lot of difference. I know Scott and I have spoke about before about the fact that the legal responsibility, but they are still there and they do need to be kept informed, because a lot of parish councillors, councillors from Somerset do go to parish meetings, and they need to all be kept informed.
Yes, they do.
Scott, do you want to comment on that?
I suppose for me, it's just trying to get to behind the point about being kept informed. I mean, the work that we're doing as part of the Standards Committee is focused in terms of codes of conduct and behaviour. What I can't, I suppose, I believe one of the points that you're trying to make in terms of the parish meetings is about general communications about Somerset Council services. And if that's the case, that's probably something that's better done through the local community networks or through our general communications. I mean, I can take away that as an attribute. I think it's just helpful for me to understand, is it that the committee would like us to be promoting standards of conduct information to parish meetings. I don't believe that's the question. I think the question is more about what can Somerset Council do to improve how it communicates to parish meetings. That's not directly within the functions of standards committee or even the.
I was chairman of a parish meeting for 10 years and nothing at all about standards, operations or anything was ever raised or sent or discussed or received by us in any shape or form. So, you know, it is a major hole that if we're trying to push and improve standards of our public management and of our councils, that it is a tier that is being, I know Scott, you'll say that we're not legally responsible, but they should at least know.
Yes, Scott, please.
So if I take as an action, certainly the request that we've already had from the committee, which is about the video being sent through, again, as part of promoting the civility and respect and using a helpful video to help, we can take that as an action for all of the city, town and parish councils. And I'll also take as an action for that also to be issued to the parish meetings. And then similarly, I'll also take as an action highlighting to our communications team and also to our local community networks service the need to also consider how parish meetings by their chairman are also kept informed at the same frequency as we are informing the town and parish councils. So I can take those two actions.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, Ewan Jones, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to respond quickly to 3 points. One, again, I completely agree with Councillor Nicholson. The South, of course, does encourage all of our member councils.
The volume is a bit strange, Ewan.
Okay, I'm going to move to somewhere. Bear with me. I'm just going to.
Everyone else is
move to.
That's a point.
Yeah.
the booming.
Move to somewhere where the
Is it coming out of here?
It comes out of this, but until no. Tell him wherever he was sat 5 minutes ago worked better.
Somebody else was talking.
Did you catch that, Ewan? Wherever you were sat 5 minutes ago was better.
Okay, I'm going to go to wherever I was sat 5 minutes ago.
We
So
heard
try again.
That's it.
That's better.
And switch his camera.
Okay. So first point. South, of course, does encourage our member councils to also fund their clerk membership of SLCC. Our issues are that there are a minority. Sorry, somebody else.
Sorry, people are struggling to hear you here. Is it a matter of speaking close to the screen and a bit more projected? And switch your camera off, maybe.
Okay, the camera's off. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Have a go.
Okay, we'll try again. First point, we of course do encourage member councils to fund their clerks' membership of SLCC. Our issue is that there are a minority of councils. There are only 6 that are not members of SALC, where often the chair of the council takes pride in keeping the precept as low as possible. And one I went to see to try to encourage them to get back into membership. Their clerk refused even to pay for their, their chair refused to even pay for their clerk to be trained. So they had to fund it themselves. So I appreciate any help from councillors in encouraging councils to also both join SALC but also fund their clerks' membership of SLCC. Second point, I don't remember who it was who made it regarding the general power of competence and is it a trend? I think it will be an increasing trend as more powers are devolved for all of the reasons that Scott listed. I just wanted to provide a little bit more information about what it is. It has two requirements. One of them is a clerk who is qualified with the Certificate of Local Council Administration, which SILCA, which SALC is the training body, not SLCC in Somerset. The second is you need to have 2/3 of your parish councillors elected. So there will be a role as we get towards the 2027 elections for Somerset Council to promote the role of parish councillors and the contribution that they make to the community to encourage more people to put themselves forward, because we had too many councils last time where too few people stood. We even had one where nobody stood at all. So yeah, please encourage that. The third is just clarification about what the Society of Local Council Clerks is, which is it's a membership body, but it's a national membership body. So in Somerset, there is a branch. So it's the local branch of SLCC. So it's not that they have a particular offer that they make to clerks. They have regular meetings and they provide support to each other. So I think we can take that back to the priority one group, but I don't think there is a role to bring SLCC in, but we'll discuss that in more detail in priority one.
Okay, Scott, do you want to pick up any of that? No. Okay, David, as it goes.
Sorry, so I think Ewan has covered some of the points that I was going to make. I think simply the general power of competence, my understanding sort of from a legal basis is that normally parish councils can only spend money within or for the benefit of their parishioners. What the general power of competence does is to allow councils to act with all the powers that a responsible person would have. So, you know, if you're applying for a grant, they can, someone with a general power of competence can apply for the grant on behalf of other councils, can receive the money and distribute it. So, you know, if you want councils to work together within an LCN, you've got to have that. And it was, I think it was a condition of the grant as well. The other point about the SLCC, I've been a parish councillor for probably 6 or 7 years, and excuse my ignorance, but that's the first time I've heard of SLCC. And I know in Kingston we don't, but I don't know whether it's because we made that decision. It's never been mentioned in a meeting. The funding for it to support the clerk has never been raised as part of budget and stuff. So I think there's probably a lot of ignorance around SLCC and the role that they support. So I would actually quite value contribution.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to, Francis, you can?
Yeah. Yes, general power of competence has been it's normal now. It's about doing things that parish councils wouldn't be allowed to do otherwise. But it doesn't actually. It brings me to a question here, which is about what we're actually trying to do. Yes, I think it would aid the efficiency and be a good thing for clerks to have to be trained for the council to have the general power of competence for councils, but that's different from the question of standards and standards of behaviour. And if we're concerned about standards of behaviour, if that's what we're here for, then thinking about the general power of competence is completely irrelevant. So is our purpose different? Is our purpose beyond standards, or are we indulging in a bit of spec creep, which comes to computer programmers as I have known well in the past life. And I think that it's a question that we need to decide is, are we going beyond the level of thinking about standards and how to make sure that that so far as we are able, we have a good effect, or at least a good offer. We actually want to do something different. And the other thing is, who pays for all this? The sorts of things here, it seems to me could end up costing this council a certain amount of money. I'm not in terms of time, if nothing else. How does the finding of salt happen? Is this something that parish and town and city councils pay for when salt is involved? Are they going to pay us if we're involved? If not, are we billing salt? And then they will be billing the parish councils. There is, I think, particularly if we are going beyond the role of standards to other sorts of improvement, it seems to me that this is a bit tricky here.
Scott.
Again, really pertinent points, and exactly why I believe that what we have today is an outline of suggestions, ideas from Priority One. I think Councillor Nicholson's right for that to take a final form in terms of what is the support package that the Standards Committee would like to consider. And again, that will come back to the Standards Committee's functions, which are very much focused in terms of standards of conduct and behaviour, and not devolution, which is where perhaps better suited the general power of competence. So I think the key here is, and it's that point around today, was very much about just trying to seek the committee's views on some of the ideas and suggestions from Priority One group before we come back to the committee with a formal paper that hopefully sets out your expectations in terms of these are the general support packages that Somerset Council and SALC are working together on to offer the town and parish councils. And in addition to that, here is how we will provide further information to parish meetings in terms of some of the general awareness about this. That's what I believe our focus is for agenda item 7, and that's certainly what is needed for it to come back to this committee, because I think the missing part of today's debate is exactly a bit more detail in terms of what that support package will entail, who's going to provide it, and who's funding it. And those are the key bits that I think you'll need to just have that final picture. So today's intention generally was just really to bring you up to speed with the Priority One's latest development. But we also wanted to use today to get your feedback to help shape what that support package needs to focus on. So that's really for us the intention of this item. That's certainly what we'd hope to do then to bring back to you for the next meeting, which will answer hopefully those points about what funding Somerset Council is able to provide to support promoting standards, and also what SALC can also provide as well.
Okay, so did you come in, Alan?
Thank you, Chairman. 5B, might I make a suggestion as to a slight amended wording? Clerks having access to and support for formal training from various organisations, e.g. SALC and SLCC. That takes out the general power of competence, which, as Francis is saying, is devolution, nothing to do with standards. But it does put it, and I deliberately not put financial support, I've just put support. Clerks having access to and support for formal training from various organisations. That might be a better way of moving this forward, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so Scott, are we looking for some definitive wording from this committee, or are we looking for these suggestions to go back to Priority Group 1?
It's certainly the latter. It's the latter in terms of these proposals will go back to Priority Group 1, and Priority Group 1 will then oversee that support package to come back to this committee. But certainly the comments that the committee members have made today, not least of which in terms of 5B, I would certainly hope that they will be welcomed by Priority Group 1, because ultimately these are Priority Group 1's recommendations. So we will need to secure their support for that, and that will then come back to this meeting. But again, just for reassurance, a lot of the comments that have been made today clearly will be taken on board, and hopefully you will see that in a refined version for the next meeting.
Now, Francis, you're a member of Priority Group 1, but you showed a reaction there which suggests you may not agree with that.
It was not, that was not about the Priority Group 1. It was about playing ping pong, as opposed to Priority Group 1 having looked at this, having been brought for further comments to the whole committee. Could this not then be worked on and be brought back to the whole committee rather than having going back to Priority Group 1 and then back to? Yeah. That was.
Okay, Scott, you'll have to identify that procedure which is most appropriate then.
You just go on forever otherwise.
Councillor Dimley.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, members of the Priority Group are in this room or online have been invited. If they prove at this meeting that that wording has changed, then I don't think it needs to go back, does it? Can we do that within this meeting?
It's the same people.
Same people.
Apart from the chair who's not here. But
Well, if you aren't here, you can't.
Ah, well, yes, exactly.
Scott.
Again, I think for me, it's just clarifying that today's debate will then lead to a formal report to the next meeting, which will help set out the support package. The reference to Priority Group 1 was, again, just a courtesy point that generally we normally share those final proposals before they come to committee. But again, we could do that electronically. It doesn't have to be via a group. It's, again, just that courtesy point to say these are the final recommendations following consideration, and they will be coming to the next standards committee meeting.
So that would appear to be the appropriate way to do it.
Sharing
in this situation. Yeah, the members generally would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Okay, so we can, I think, move on from that item now, having
Sorry, Jake, I've got one. Yeah.
sorry, Robin.
That's all right. No problem. Just to sweep up a couple of bits, Scott. When you mentioned earlier about the reduction in numbers of councillors or potential, going out for review, if and when, probably when that happens, we talked about somebody having 22 parishes to go and visit. Is somebody going to do an impact assessment on, is that something going to be 30 parishes that somebody's going to have to go and visit if we reduce the number of councillors? And also, just a point on from LCNs, our colleagues in LCNs, do they actually invite the parish meetings? The LCNs?
Yeah.
And if they don't, why not?
Yes, they do.
They do.
Yeah, so, if they're invited, they can go, and then that's their mechanism for sharing information, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, certainly, for us in Shepton Mallet, obviously, ours is principal sort of town and parish council in the LCN, but I think very much we, from our point of view, it's a sort of sharing platform for kind of picking up information and learning sort of thing. So yeah, I would suggest that's the best way they can find out things.
Did you have to comment on that?
No, I mean, that captures the action that I picked up earlier, which is just to make sure that our LCN team are involved in the parish meetings as part of their information.
Francis,
Just very quickly, the reduction in councillors from 110 to the proposed 96 will be for largely single member divisions. Therefore, instead of 55 divisions, there are going to be 80, 85, 90, 95 divisions. Now, for the current division that I'm elected for, the current proposal put forward by this council, don't know whether it goes through in the end, would reduce the number of parishes from 23 to 10.
Okay, so it had the opposite effect. Oh, right. Oh, that's a good thing. Yeah.
okay, I think we can move on to the next item now, which is the annual report to full council. Would you like to say where we are with that?
Thank you, Chair. And again, that's published as part of the agenda. You can see particularly referenced then in terms of both the cover and report, the joint work that the committee has been doing, its areas of focus. I think the key point then being Appendix 1 to that report. And it's really just the opportunity for the committee to consider that. And hopefully with the committee support, that will then go forward to the full council meeting on the 21st of May.
Does any member of the committee wish to make a comment? Francis?
My voice is too old now. Priority group 2 and the code of conduct, the adoption of model code of conduct across the county, to working with so to deliver this. Now, the work of the priority group 2 has brought back to this committee over the year has been to say huge amounts of effort have gone into persuading sovereign bodies to accept our own code of conduct, which they absolutely do not have to. Most of them have something pretty well approaching it. Has the disadvantage that if we decide to change ours, as we thought of doing this year, we'd have to persuade them all again to change it to match ours. And the object of the exercise of this was purely and simply to make it simpler for the monitoring officers to have the same code of conduct to look at for every case. Now, they are sovereign bodies. Lots of work was done. The conclusion this year was that there was no more work to be done. I do not think it should be there in any action plan for next year, or in any rubric which suggests that we should go on trying to do this.
Scott, is that appropriate procedurally?
So there's two parts to Councillor Nicholson's part. I mean, the Appendix 1 is setting out the past in many ways. It's what's happened over the past 12 months. The bit on the
there in the text.
It is, but it's just reminding council that the committee has 3 priority groups, which it set up in 2024-25. It's just a statement of fact. I think the key bit, I think, which is where Councillor Nicholson's highlight is perhaps the points on page 23, which is looking ahead in 2025. I think it's there about perhaps something that the committee might want to consider further, which is the role of those priority groups and whether they are necessary or whether some of the work can be consolidated. But equally, recognising that the vast majority of the work's actually done through the committee as a collective body anyway. So I think there's a point, and I know we did talk about this before in one of the workshops, which is trying to establish again the scope and the membership of the priority groups. It may well be that the committee feel, certainly when we consider the support package at the next meeting, that the committee may wish to reconsider whether it needs 3 priority groups for 25-26 or whether actually it can consolidate some of that work.
James, come back.
Yeah. Yes. In addition to delivering the outcomes of the 3 priority groups, is in the first thing said in the looking ahead in 2025. That suggests that it is in this intention of going on trying to persuade other councils to adopt our code of conduct is still there. And whether or not we continue with priority groups of any sort, that needs to be removed. Is my belief, and it's my belief that this is what this committee agreed we would no longer be trying to work on this year. And yes, absolutely. Let us not have a looking ahead which talks about 3 priority groups. Let's have a looking ahead which allows us to change that in the way that Scott perhaps has indicated.
Scott.
Ultimately, the establishment of the priority groups is something that the committee agreed, and that the same is true. Therefore, if the committee wishes to disband any, consolidate any, that's completely within the committee's gift. I mean, if it helps just to get this particular report over the line in the time that we've got, you could just say, in addition to delivering the outcomes of the, and lose the word 3.
The committee, I would have said.
Or in addition to delivering the outcomes of the committee and take out all reference to the priority groups. If that's what the committee would like to see as an amendment, that's open to the committee.
David?
My understanding when we set up these priority groups that we weren't setting up 3 priority groups for the sake of having 3 priority groups. It was because there were 3 things that we needed to look at. So if there aren't 3 things we need to look at, then we don't need 3 priority groups. So if there is something new that comes up that warrants having another priority group, then we should have the ability to continue.
And if I may, we ought to take out the sentence, that says the committee will continue to encourage all Somerset City Town and Parish Councils to adopt one single code of conduct for their elected representatives. It just means every time we decide to do something different, we have to persuade all 300 odd of them to change to match us. And this is going to be, frankly, impossible.
Scott, there's the two different suggestions there on different items. Want to comment to those?
So again, for the committee to consider, we could take out reference in the looking ahead to the priority groups, if that's what the committee would like. And similarly, in terms of the one single, or we could, just a suggestion, but you could change that one single to a common is an alternative. I mean, one of the aspirations was always of the committee for there to be a common code of conduct, but ultimately we all recognise that the town and parish councils are sovereign bodies. So it can be an aspiration, but ultimately it is for them to determine whether they wish to adopt or not, if they want to carry on with their own.
So with that broadening of the definition of both of those subjects, are we happy with that? David?
Sorry. No, my just thought was that there will surely be times if legislation changes or if the review of the current government review throws up changes to the LGAs and the LGA code of conduct, then surely we need to have the ability to reflect that. We can't impose it, as you say, but we can encourage people. Having the common code of conduct makes a whole lot of sense, so that everybody understands the rules that all councillors are governed by. So it makes a lot of sense. It's in our interest, it's in everyone's interest that councils share a common code of conduct. So anything we can do to encourage that, we should be doing.
Okay. Does anybody want to come back on that? Okay, so will you indicate there's pushing a glass of your nose, but okay.
Just very briefly, and then I'll shut up. A number of parishes took the code of conduct that we had promulgated and then made some small modifications to it to suit themselves. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be encouraging them not to do this.
No.
And equally, I think we are putting ourselves in a really difficult place if we, every time we want to make a change, we then are enjoined to encourage everybody else to make the same change. I think we jolly well should be encouraging them all to be aware of all the advice that is available to them, particularly from LALC and SALC and so on, and to be aware of changes in legislation. But I am actually really uncomfortable by this pushing one single, because many of them feel that most of it is absolutely right, but there are some bits which are inappropriate for them, and they make their modification. And we could, I think, always encourage them to make sure that officers here have a copy of their code of conduct and possibly retract changes where it's different. But that would feel a more reasonable place. I really will stop on this one now.
Okay, Scott, could you sum that up?
I mean, again, if it's helpful, I think the key point is perhaps just recognising. I think the challenge is the one single reference. I think in reality, what we continue to try and promote is the adoption of the LGA model code of conduct. And then what happens is if local councils wish to vary it, add minor modifications, that's completely within the gift. But I think the fundamental is the core principles are within the LGA model code of conduct. So they generally remain unchanged. And if anything, that aspiration is perhaps better articulated as to adopt the LGA model code of conduct. I think that's a more neutral stance rather than Somerset Council's code of conduct. That's a very different thing, as is, for reassurance that who aren't aware, Somerset Council's code of conduct is based on the LGA model code of conduct with some very minor local modifications, which is exactly where some local parish councils, which Councillor Nixon's reference, have done as well. So they have done exactly what we've done, but theirs will be slightly different, and that's perfectly fine because that's within their own sovereignty. So perhaps just as a suggestion, we change that reference to one single to the LGA model code of conduct.
There appears to be a general nod of consent. Did you want to move that formally?
Yeah.
So, Councillor Davis?
I would just like to ask a question, please, about Councillor Nicholson. Have you got a actual reason for saying this? Because we know Exmoor is different to the rest of Somerset, i.e. planning, for example. So have you brought this in to support Exmoor, or is it only going across the whole?
Across the whole county. Across, this is nothing to do with the parishes in the division that I sit for, but I'm very happy formally to move that.
Yes, your second there. Who can second that in the room at the moment?
Who can second the movement?
Well, I can second it. So,
Yeah.
So, are those in favour of that then? Anybody against? Yes, that's the we've got that approach. So you outlined.
We'll amend the annual report on that basis.
Okay. Are there any other, Alan?
Chairman, do you want to formally move the removal of the words, the 3 priority groups, the first paragraph? Has that been taken on board?
Is that procedurally possible to do that?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay. Do members present here feel that's appropriate? I'm looking straight at you. Yeah. People are okay with that. I think we don't need to formalise that. That's okay to do that as well.
And that's in the looking ahead 2025, isn't it?
Okay. Any other points people wish to raise about this? No. Then we'll move on to them. We'll accept that with the changes made so far. We'll move on to the final item, which is work programme. Scott.
Again, you can see the proposed items, which again look at, well, certainly look like they will make for a busy meeting in terms of numbers of items. I think the only thing I would add is we need to add to this what we discussed earlier under item 7, which is the support package for local councils.
Okay, any comments from around the chamber?
Just a question, Scott. I know it's a what if, but so if the government were minded to change the standards regime, can't remember what we did last time. Do we think that would result in a change of the constitution, or do you think the constitutions would remain the same and that would just sit alongside it?
I think it rather depends on what the final proposals are from the government. I think, as we've seen from the consultation, the majority of the proposals relate to sanctions rather than the principles, as in the Nolan principles and the codes of conduct themselves. They relate more to some would talk about the teeth of the standards regime, as in reenacting the teeth, to which I think our code of conduct and the model code of conduct just makes reference to sanctions rather than being very specific. I mean, ultimately, legislation is primary. So whether we say it or not in a constitution, the legislation will always be relevant.
Okay, do you have any other comments from around the room? Otherwise, I suspect that's noted and approved, and that's the final item on the agenda. 90 minutes after kick-off, the final whistle. Okay, no extra time. Thank you very much.
And all penalties. Well checked.
No.